Oh, and there we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Summer Academy, the speaker series. This is our last session in this series, and we're super excited to have Krista. I'm about to introduce Krista in just a moment, but first, my name is Saya. My pronouns are wherever you feel in the moment. You won't be wrong, as it says he, she, or they. I don't know how to do it right. Um, and I am the manager of Rainbow Alley at the Center on Colfax. And this is another entry into our Summer Academy series. Normally, we're going around talking to different organizations, leaders in the community about what it's like to be LGBTQ in those positions and what are the skills that you need in order to kind of make it into adulthood. Things that we've learned, lessons that we want to pass down. And so this is another one of those episodes. And today we are talking about how your existence in itself, child, is powerful. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back because Krista, in this title, your existence is powerful. So Krista is an awesome person, born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, where they made their way into a career into student affairs and higher education. So for the last 4 years, Krista has been at universities in Florida, Tennessee, Kansas, Texas, and Colorado. They just be doing a tour, let me tell you. They graduated with their BA in psychology from the University of South Florida, and then went on to get their master's in college student personnel from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And during that time working with students, that is when Krista realized the passion they had for helping underrepresented students understand that their voices and experiences matter. Period. That that is the message, right? Bloop. Additionally, Krista focuses on helping their own students feel empowered to make well-informed decisions in their life. And so Krista's areas of interest include LGBTQIA plus issues, intercultural student leadership development, culturally based fraternal organizations, and elevating Black women's voices and visibility. So welcome, Krista.
Hi, how's it going?
You know, we making it. We are making it, even though everything is terrible outside. We making it.
Listen, we
But how
making it.
are you doing? Anything else that I missed that you may want to share with the peeps?
No,
No,
I
we
have a
covered it
couple
all.
of like points to add when we drop into the PowerPoint, but I'm good so far. Took me a little quick nap before we hopped in, so I'm good.
Come on, self
Ready to
care.
go. Ready to go.
Before we move on too far, I did also, as always, want to shout out our wonderful ASL interpreter, Kendra. Kendra has stuck with us through this entire series, listening to our gab, our nonsense, and everything, and making sure that we're being as accessible as we possibly can in this new virtual world. So just shout out to Kendra and Rain Frog Interpreters. If y'all are looking for an interpreter for your own event or your own virtual speaker series or anything you're trying to do, hit up Rain Frog Interpreters, and Kendra is the go. All right. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Krista, and we're going to get started.
Okay, let us get the share screen here. Okay.
All right. I got it all up.
Okay, perfect. Hold on. Let me. Okay. I think we are good. I think we are good. All right. So, again, thank you, Saya, for reaching out, for having me do this. I was mentioning to Saya earlier. I'm typically not the person that does like public speaking type things, but this is something I really, really wanted to do. Just some information that I've learned and as I've grown that I think has been really helpful to me as a Black LGBT person, having lived a few places and done a couple of things. And so I hope that through this process, folks can just pick up something, maybe a little nugget or two that resonates with them. So my first thing is who is Krista. So as I mentioned, my background is in education. I have been working in higher education and student affairs for the 4 years, but was also a grad student in higher education and student affairs, was a very involved undergraduate student as well. And so I hopped around and did several things. But one of the highlights of my job, and one of the things that I love the most, is working with my students. So these are a couple of photos of my students from the past few years. The photo in the bowling alley is my sets of students from last year, and the photo with the very large group of people is one of my sets of students from 2 years ago, actually, when I lived in Colorado, which is where I met Saya. And so,
Krista, real quick, is it possible for you to take your slides out of presenter view?
Oh, are they in presenter view? I'm so sorry. Let's see here, because it only lets me share only lets me share one screen. Hold on. Okay, let's see if I stop.
Pause, y'all. Technical difficulties.
Can I share?
We're gonna take some water.
We do that. Does that work?
There it goes.
Okay. Perfect. I always have to think, because I have 2 monitors. I'm like, which one is it gonna go on? Okay. So again, these are 2 past sets of students of mine, and again, the highlights of my job. I really appreciate, kind of as I mentioned earlier in my bio, just really working with them to talk about their experiences, and also realize that they have more of an impact than they realize at times. And I don't know, this is, again, one of the highlights of my job, and one of the things I've appreciated most, and it gets me through some of the worst days, and also gets me through some of the best days. And these are the people, these are the folks, some of them anyway. So I'm appreciating them. And so one of the things that I've learned through this process of working with students and reflecting myself and just trying to figure out who I am as a person is the importance of being yourself, and what that really looks like, and how in being yourself, you could be silently affirming someone and you have no idea. And you could be that example for someone that like didn't know it was possible for someone like them to be out in the world, to be out here thriving, to just being authentic and living life well. And so I wrote something down that I really wanted to kind of open with, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss anything. So I wrote, for folks from marginalized communities, it's truly an affirming moment when we see ourselves represented in something we aspire to do, something that supports our general wellness, or in a space that creates joy for us. And I can't stress enough how much this kind of thought process has been a part of my journey. I think as I've gotten older, I've seen more representation for queer and trans folks of color. And while I do think it's happening more now, it's still not enough. And I was well into my 20s until I saw another gender fluid, like masculine presenting woman, and I immediately thought, oh my God, we exist. Like, we're real. I'm so serious. Like, I did not, like, in my head.
There's like a bunch of us.
There is. And I did not know that. I just didn't know that. And so in my 20s, and I'll talk about this person specifically a little bit later, I saw them, I was like, wow, like we can do this. We can be this in the world. And like, it's okay. People love and respect them. People are feel supported by them. And so and they were just being themselves. So I really appreciated that.
And I appreciate, like, even just that part of just being the person that you are and living in your identities, coming, like, after you've been able to come out and thrive and do the things you've been able to do. It's cool to see younger people who's almost like in a reflection of yourself, see that and know that they can, do that. I love when, like, some youth come into Rainbow Alley and I got heels on or something, and they're like, what? You can just do that and you just feel fine doing that? And it's like, it's all chill.
Yeah. Like, just listen, knock it out. It's like, it's the best feeling. And then I think going along with that was something that I very much had to accept that was something I wanted for myself before I was able to show that, like, outwardly to other people. Because a big thing for me growing up was my my family had a lot to comment on about like what I wore, and it wasn't like, oh, a color or like a fit. It was like, why are you wearing this thing? Like, you found this in like the men's section, or like, why aren't you wearing like skirts and dresses? Like, you look so pretty. I'm just like, I don't like those. I don't like those. And so I also just wasn't interested in what young girls at my time were interested at the time that I was growing up that were interested in. I very much was always attracted to like the blazers and like the loafers and like the baggy clothes, which I don't think has to be, clothing shouldn't be gendered anyway. Like, wear what you want to wear, but the things that my family was suggesting that I wear and like would buy for me to wear, they didn't contribute to my confidence.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like it was more for them than it was for you.
Absolutely. And I think it was how they wanted other people to perceive them and our family. And it had nothing to do with me, which I now know. But at the time, I was like, what are y'all doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But listen, catch me out here in like a suit, a patterned suit though, and like a nice button up.
Okay.
Can't tell me nothing. Not a thing. Not a thing. Nothing. So tonight I'm just going to share some things that I've learned in my own journey about being authentic, and I hope that some of it resonates with folks and that you're able to pick up some little nuggets. So the first thing that I'll share is trust yourself. You know you better than anyone else. And as I've grown and reflected, I'm in my late 20s, and so I'm still young and I have a lot of work to do going forward. But I look back at things and I think, you knew you didn't like this, or you knew you didn't want to do this, or you knew that like something did not align with who you knew yourself to be as a person, but you did it anyway. And so really assessing why I did that. And so when I say trust yourself, you know you better than anyone else. You know what feeds your confidence. You know what makes you feel fly. You know what affirms you. You know what pulls at your heart. You know what brings you joy. And if something isn't serving you, when you can safely do so, detach from it, let it go. Because in the long run, it's going to do you more harm than good. And I want to emphasize the last point of when you can safely detach from it, because there may be some situations that you're in, things that you have to do that are created to create a net of safety for you at the time, which, you know, you do what you have to do. Situations call for different things. But when you can safely, again, detach from it, let it go, because that move forward, that step forward into a place that is safe and authentic is amazing. It's awesome. And I'm still learning how to do that to this day.
And I think too, that goes into, or reminds me a lot of the idea around intuition, and things like that, of, you know, that gut feeling. A lot of times it's actually our brain trying to communicate the feeling side of our brain. Our feeling side of our brain doesn't really have words. Right. It just says, I'm angry and upset, and because of that, you're going to have a stomach ache right now. Yeah. But a lot of those things come from past experiences, or even, you know, that you felt that similar way before. You notice something about the situation that you're in that feels familiar and feels unsafe, or feels like it's not going to be productive or not for you. And it sounds like you're saying, listen to that voice.
Yes, most definitely. Because again, what I've learned is that I've had more moments than not where I've looked back and it was in like, I've had to learn, which I'm tiptoeing into my next point a little bit, but I've had to learn to give myself grace. And to be like, you were really just trying to figure stuff out. Like, you knew something was off, you knew something wasn't working, and you knew you did not like that, but you did it anyway. And again, some of the things I had to do in those settings were to keep me safe, and were to keep me in a place where I wasn't ridiculed or like outcast by people, because we all need that human connection though. And especially during this time of like COVID-19, I think a lot of folks are feeling like that disconnection a little bit. And so, you know, just reflecting on
about maybe a time or an example of like when you wish you would have trusted yourself.
when I wish I would have trusted myself, I think back to early undergraduate days where I'm incredibly introverted. I'm very introverted, so I like to spend a lot of time with myself. It's how I recharge. But I also, and to this day still, but initially like had difficulty making friends because people think I'm quiet, and sometimes that translates to uninterested. But it's just I'm trying to observe. I'm trying to figure out, am I safe here? Am I welcome here? And those types of things. And so one of the times that I wish that I would have trusted myself was it was something as simple as something that I wanted to wear, and it was very, at the time, like masculine presenting in a setting where most of the women presenting folks were in feminine attire, feminine garb, and just different things. And so I didn't wear what I wanted to wear. I wore what was going to help me fit in. And I look back at the picture now, and I physically look ill and uncomfortable. Like I physically look ill and uncomfortable. And I think now, like, you didn't want to do that. You didn't. But I did it anyway. And that was one of the first things that kind of helped me realize that, you know what? When you push through to do something that aligns with who you know yourself to be, there's a freedom that comes in that, and just a spirit of, you know what? If you have an issue, that's your problem. That has nothing to do with me.
And that is a hard lesson to learn and to feel confident in too.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's interesting. I think going back to even what you said at the beginning around just existing being almost a form of protest or a way that people can see into the future a little bit. Dang it, I had it and I lost it.
You're good. You're good. You want me to continue on and we'll come back?
Oh, okay.
All right. So kind of in this vein of like trusting yourself. So for some context for folks, I grew up in a very religious household. My parents were ministers and eventually satellite pastors. And I knew about like 9 or 10 that I wasn't heterosexual. And for a long time, I thought I was gay. But as I grew and got older, I was just like, no, that's not really it either. And growing up in a Black religious household, like you don't talk about that at all, ever. It's not addressed. Period. Like it's just not. And I think, in fact, the opposite happens is people try their hardest to cover it up and make sure like people don't see it, which I think is part of the reason that there was so much concern in like what I wore. But
because there is that negative connotation that's associated with even, and I tell this all the time, right? It's when you see discrimination around sexual orientation, usually it's more so gender expression that people are using to like guess about sexual orientation.
Well, yeah, because there's no way you can guess sexual orientation. I think people like to assume often, but like you can't guess. And people are like, oh, like if a person falls into, such and such like visual categories and they dress this way, it's like, oh, then this person is this. And it's like, no, not necessarily. They might be, but they might not. And guess whose business that is not?
Yours.
Like it's not their business. That has nothing to do with it.
Period.
So again, continuing on, another thing that I learned throughout this process of just trying to figure stuff out leads me into my next point. We kind of touched on this earlier, is give yourself grace to explore and discover what works for you. And I think that this is like an ongoing, like lifelong process. You can, be at 26, think one thing works, 35, 44, and keep on going down and just figuring out stuff that works for you. But you have to give yourself grace and space to do that. And so for me, that was is like my early 20s and still going. I initially came out as bisexual to a friend when I was about 19, to a group of friends when I was about 21. And I think about 23, 24, so like 2 or 3 years ago recently, I realized that doesn't cover everything. That doesn't explain everything that I've always felt. And then to add to that, I'm also gender non-binary. And this was something I knew, but I didn't have the words to describe until I was in my 20s. And then I spent a lot of time trying to fit into societal ideas of femininity instead of exploring what that looked like for me and leaning into my non-binariness, if that makes sense. And so I show up in spaces sometimes that presents or a larger society deems masculine. But for me, what was interesting was that I didn't realize that there was quote unquote a problem or an issue until other people would tell me. So I was just doing stuff that I wanted to do. And people were like, hey, that's like not a typical thing that like women do, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Or like, hey, that like that's not a typical thing that like women wear, right? And I'm like, what does that mean? I'm confused. So again,
I don't care.
No, I just did not realize that was a problem for folks. And I think of it in the example of this whole process. I've sifted through and discovered my non-binary identity it's not dependent on my presentation. It's not dependent on what I do or don't do or how I show up in the world. It just is. And it's just how I exist. And it's who I know myself to be. And I think I've moved closer to accepting that is confusing for some folks and people won't get it. But that's cool. You don't have to. As long as I get it and I'm able to live in that space, I'm good with it.
Absolutely. Like, and being able, and I like that phrase too. I forgot where I heard that before, but even just hearing, like, even saying there's power in just saying, oh, you know what? I understand that this is who I am and this is the consequences of that. And I'm good with that. Like, and I can deal with it. I can survive it. I can get past it because I would rather be happy in one way than have to sacrifice.
Yeah, because for me, I got to a point where I was trying to do so many things that were in opposition to who I knew myself to be. There was a point where I was like, I gotta get out. I gotta break free. I gotta throw everything away and just be myself because I physically couldn't do it. Like my body was reacting to how hard I was fighting to not be myself.
And those feelings, they have to go somewhere, right? If we're feeling ashamed of ourselves, if we're feeling all, unsafe, if we're feeling all these things, we can keep them inside for as long as we want to. But at some point, they're either gonna flood over into something else, and now we're taking our anger, frustrations out on other people, or sometimes ourselves. And it can get really scary. And it's almost like, is it worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that turned into eating. Like I had a lot of issues with food and a lot of issues with just what I ate in general, to the point that the thought of eating would literally make me sick. So I did that for about a year. And I think that was like 2016 to like 2017, and compounded with like some stress from work and just like familial stress. I think at the end of that year, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I really can't. And I think that's when I took a very intentional turn to start dressing how I wanted, to make sure, I figured out, because it ended up, the eating was my outlet, but it ended up being some allergy issues that I didn't know I had. And so I took the time to figure out what that looked like and focus on just my wellness as a person in general. I think is really when things started to shift for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you got to the place that you are now, fam.
Listen, it has been a long road and we are still trucking, but I'm thankful to have more of a clear direction for who I am and where I want to go and what I want to do and how I exist in this world. Like it truly makes me happy to see queer folks in general, but Black and brown queer folks just out in the world being themselves unapologetically. And I really, truly wish that little me had that to see, because I think it would have been so incredibly powerful and helpful. And so again, that theme of just like being and existing in the world gives space to other people. And I hope that with what I do in the future, and as I learn about myself and continue to walk into that, I could do the same for other people.
Absolutely. And before we move on from this point,
Mhm.
any tips that you would give to those who are watching on how to give yourself grace? What does that look like? Or you could say what it was for you.
Yeah. I had to really take control of my thoughts. I'll start there. And I think it's really easy for folks to fall into negative self-talk, especially when you're at a place in life that maybe you know that doesn't suit you, or you're doing something you know isn't you. But I learned to find the moments where alignment happened and to be thankful for those and highlight those and celebrate those. So that's one thing I would start with. And then another thing would be, this is like tiptoeing into one of my other points, but to surround yourself as much as you can with things that affirm you. So whether that's friends, chosen family, like whatever that looks like for you, surround yourself and get into things that affirm you. For me, for a while, that was dancing. I also love music. So like for me, I'm very much like that. I'm gonna put on my headphones and tune people out for a couple of hours so I can turn up to these bops, because I need that right now. I need that right now. So those would be two that have really helped me.
Absolutely. And I wanted to highlight something that you just said about finding joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding, with all of the things going on in the world, you got to choose joy somewhere, some type of way. Instead of choosing the harmful thing, what would it look like to choose something that's actually going to bring you some solace, and joy doesn't necessarily have to be like happy-go-lucky, right?
Yeah.
But something that brings you comfort. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And please ignore the fire alarm in the background. I was like right next to a fire station, so when it goes off, we always hear it. But yes, completely agree. Finding joy in those moments, whatever it looks like for you, is incredibly important. And sometimes that joy is found in disconnecting for half an hour, a couple of hours, just disconnecting and just being in the world is also a good way. Okay. So my next point, or just thing that I want to go over, is don't operate on someone else's timeline. I think we've talked about this a little bit. Comparing yourself to someone takes away from the work that you're doing to learn and know yourself. And I think I know I have gotten caught up in this, like, well, this person is doing that. And like, maybe if I, stepped in this way, I could maybe have the same thing. Like this person is where I want to be. And like, that's how they got there. And like, how do I copy that to make sure I'm in the same place? And again, I'm learning how someone got where they are isn't necessarily how I'm going to get where I'm going. And one thing I've been continually working on, just generally, but also in a therapy outlet, is to be okay with shifts and changes. And it's cool and it's great to have a plan of where you want to be, but don't be so strict about the journey and how you get there, because that's different for everybody.
Yeah. I tell people, don't be Blockbuster, right? Mm-hmm. Blockbuster did not survive because it refused to adapt.
Yeah.
And everything that you see around you is not strength, it's not speed, it's none of that. It is adaptation. How are you able to fit into the environment that you're in?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. Props to you. That's a good one. I like that one. And then I would also say, in this process of like not operating on someone else's timeline, I've really had to decipher what was me versus what I took on / created to make sure that I was physically and mentally safe. And I think that's a lifelong process. And there isn't a magic button you can fix real quick and it's like, oh, it's all done, we're good, like we figured it out. It's continual. And I think I can finally like say for the first time like ever in my life that like I am enjoying my journey and my process and excited to see where I end up, because I have an idea of where I want to go, the things that I want to be doing, but I'm excited to see how I get there. And that is a statement, like even like 2 years ago, that would have like filled me with a bit of anxiety and be like, whoa, like you can't hope for, you can't, put too many things out there. It's like, you know what? Let's just see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Put it all out there. See what happens, child.
Yeah. Let's just see what happens. If a cool opportunity comes up you didn't think about.
What's something that maybe what's something that happened in your life maybe where you realize that like, oh, you know what? I can actually just do this in my own way.
Do this in my own way.
And I know for me, I'm very similar to you. Like, I don't know ever what I'm doing. And also, just a secret to any young person watching and thinking like adults have it together.
No. We sure don't. Hello.
Just keep going.
Okay. Hello.
What? Okay. Why isn't my camera working now?
I can't hear you, but I can't see you. Well, I can't see anybody, but.
Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my computer, y'all, but we gonna keep going. But yeah, as I was saying, yeah, like adults really don't. The adults that you in your life that you think really have it together, when you have them behind closed doors, it's like, child, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where I'm going. And I really leaned in, especially like in college and stuff. I really leaned into doing my own thing and trusting that, as long as I'm working hard, as long as I'm trying to keep all my ducks in a row, trying to stay somewhat sane, that things tend to kind of pan out because, as long as you're always looking for those opportunities and keeping yourself open to opportunities, they're there in front, they're there around you. You just got to catch them. And if you don't catch them, then you're kind of stuck. But that's where like that positivity and all that comes in. Sorry, go ahead, Krista.
No, you're good. I agree. And I think at one point in, figuring out what works for me, focusing on my own timeline, I was letting what people told me of myself overtake what I knew to be true of myself. And I made myself so small in hopes that people would just leave me alone because there was so much being dumped on me at one time. And I was just hoping that, like, you know what, if I just see myself out of this process, like maybe people will leave me alone. And when I tell you that didn't serve me at all, it just made me more anxious, more tired, more just more stressed. And it's not a good look. It's not a good feel. And that then led me to share my story and connect. And so one of the things I've appreciated over the last couple of years is I've gotten to connect with truly some really phenomenal people with various identities, but especially some Black LGBT plus folks that I'm really thankful for, which is something I also didn't have when I was growing up. I didn't have time to make those connections. Didn't have time, but I also wasn't in an area, in a space where people were to make those connections in the first place. And I definitely count you, Saya, in this. And I'm thankful for being in spaces to be with people where we can share stories that empower us, but from the lens of being in community. So it's just a feeling of like, when I say something, like, you get this. And I know you get this because you've experienced it as well. And having those connections has been so crucial to me in the last few years.
Absolutely. And what sticks out about what you're saying to me is I think what tends to happen is when you share your story with someone who shares an identity to you or shares experiences with you, you start sharing that story, and that person is like, right? I've had that
Yeah.
happen to me too. And
Yes.
all of a sudden, there's this connection, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't feel as alone anymore because you know that, okay, this isn't just a me thing. This is
Mm-hmm.
something that is happening to a lot of people, and everyone is trying to figure out, is it just me, is it something else? And sometimes we can share our story. I think one of the hard things is, especially as LGBTQ folks, and I think marginalized folks in general,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's you're a person of color, or anything like that, is you share stories to or not even share, but people a lot of times may use your stories almost not against you, but like they're meaning well. They're asking you about your coming out story. They're
Yeah.
asking you about X, Y, and Z, and they don't realize that they're about to make you relive trauma that they're not going to even be able to connect with.
Yep.
Um, versus sharing that in a space where everyone kind of has either a similar story or a similar background, or even just sharing those same identities. Even if my coming out story is more tragic than someone else's, you had more
Yeah.
privilege in that way. There's
Mm-hmm.
still that ability to connect because you've experienced something else
Right.
a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. And the connection is important, but what I think sometimes people miss is the connection you didn't know you made. So maybe you and I, in this forum are having a conversation, but there's someone watching or someone who will see this and be like, wow, like I really appreciated that. Like, yes, I connect with that. Like, all right, come through. Like, yes, this is also an experience that I've had. And for me, that's come in a couple of ways. And so I was in undergrad. I talked earlier about the first gender fluid, like masculine presenting, like Black woman that I saw, and her name was Monica. And I don't know that I think I talked to her maybe at one point for like 5 minutes. They probably don't know that I exist at all, but they were such a huge part of me realizing that we can exist and be in the world, but not only exist and be, like we can thrive. And I really appreciated that. And for me, I work with students in my day-to-day working in higher education and student affairs. And you try your best to have moments that support students. You try your best to connect students to resources that they need and empower them. And you don't always get the feedback of like how it went or how the student felt. It's a very thankless job, but in the last couple of years, I've been able to get feedback. One student in particular sent me an email, and all I did was they lived within my I work in housing and residence life in student affairs, and so they lived within my building 1 year and then returned for the next year. And all I did was say hi to them, affirm them with their pronouns, and just chat with them and welcome them back to the space. And they sent me an email basically saying like I felt really seen, I felt really heard. Like it's really cool to have an LGBT hall director who's open with their pronouns. And I was like, what? What?
It's the little things, y'all.
Like I was like, wow. I didn't even in the moment like think twice about it, but the fact that they took time out to like write me that email is probably one of the highlights in my most recent like career days, and something I'm very thankful for. So again, I say share your story and connect, because you never know who you're silently affirming and who needs to see you, who needs to see the authentic.
Mhm.
You never know.
Or the impact that you have on people later on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I say, sometimes we plant seeds and we're not there to watch it grow. Um, I remember, and this has happened to me a few times, where I become friends with someone. I remember there was one person in high school, one person in undergrad, and now when I look back and I see their Facebook photos or Instagram photos, they've come out as either lesbian, like
Mm-hmm.
very butch lesbian, or as trans.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that explains why you were so attached to my hip, because I was in a way
Uh-huh.
like I loved it. Like I was like, oh yeah, you my friend or whatever. And
Yeah.
then later in life when they come out, I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense. And it's like, in a way, I think you know, not, and I don't want to say that I'm the only person that's like, but I think it's awesome that, you know, they were able to see me and gravitate towards me because they could tell that, okay, even if they're not coming out right now because they're still processing, they still see me as a safe person to like be around and like still explore gender in that way. So I just think that's so awesome, and just another way to show you don't know, even if you're not sharing necessarily your story, if you're able and safe to be out, and you feel safe enough to speak out and things like that, you never know really who's watching and who's paying attention to you, and how it's going to impact their own lives.
For sure. And I can speak to that from a personal note. I don't think I've ever told you this, but you were one of the people that gave me like the courage and the confidence to be like, my pronouns are they, them.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
Listen, because you would come through, and for context, Sai and I worked at the same place for about a year or so. And yes, DU. And Saya came into every space they were in. We're just like, this is me. This is who I am. If you have a problem with it, it ain't got nothing to do with me. And I was like,
it sure doesn't.
Bet I'm with it. Let's do it. I'm here for it.
Take that to your therapist.
Listen, that sounds like a you problem, Fred. You got it, though. You got it. So going along with share your story and connect, another thing that I think has helped me is find outlets that affirm you. And so for me, this has been a lot of things, and I think this can come in a lot of ways for a lot of people. But I have just a couple of things that I have watched, I have consumed, that I've seen myself represented in, which like 5-10 years ago, I didn't have access to, or it didn't even exist.
It didn't exist.
Didn't exist. And some of the stuff didn't even exist until like 1 or 2 years ago. And so I'm thankful for the creators, the folks that have put things together. And so I'll share a few, and Saya, feel free to pop in if you have any as well. So one of the books that I'm reading now, it's called The Guild of Stories by, Joelle Gomez, I believe is the author's name. And it essentially focuses on a Black queer woman who is a vampire, but travels through time. And so it's her life and experiences as a Black queer woman traveling through time and a vampire. And I was like, what? First of all, this is dope. Like, I'm here for it, because I think people are so used to seeing Black LGBT folks and Black folks in general in spaces of like trauma or just like pain. And so for me, just to be able to pick up a book and be like, you were just traveling through time and doing life and all this stuff, like, I think is great, and we need more of it. And I'm excited.
Can you say the title again?
The Guild of Stories. The Guild of Stories. And let me double check. I'm pretty sure the author is Joelle Gomez. Let's see. Yeah, Joelle Gomez. The Guild of Stories. And so that's been one that has really been giving me those moments of like disconnection where I can just sit back and read about a story that isn't full of like trauma, like for Black folks, Black LGBT folks, which has been wonderful.
Yes. Which, and it's interesting, yeah, because even the outlets that I found, or the shows that I feel represent some of my story and I can see some of myself in, it's not even that they avoid those parts. It's not necessarily that they're not going to talk about the Black trauma, but it's also reframing it and showing it in a way that's not what we call deficit model, right? Where we see you and, okay, well, the Blacks are poor, the Blacks are this, the Blacks are that, we need to help them, rather than seeing it for the full picture of what it is. You know, Black LGBTQ folks are very resilient. You know, like, they are able to not only survive the things that they experience, but they are then able to turn it around and thrive and come up with these like amazing concepts and look so beautiful and so stunning. And, you know, come out of that alive. I think of Pose, obviously. I think of Legendary, obviously. But even I remember growing up, one of my favorite shows was called Noah's Ark, and it was like the only Black LGBTQ show I could ever find. It had all of 2 seasons and a movie. And I have watched every single episode so many times. I've watched the movie multiple times. And what's that show? Sex Education is also another good one. Though it doesn't focus. Heard of that one. So that's on Netflix, and it's I won't go into depth about the story, but there is like a Black gay character who is a main character, and that's also something that I've reclaimed for myself. Is I refuse to watch anything that doesn't have at least one like Black character with good character development. Yeah. Okay. I'm not talking about the token that y'all put in so that way the Blacks couldn't get mad. I'm talking about a character that was really thought out, has a personality of their own, goes through their own trials and tribulations. And part of that is I need that affirmation. I need to see how other people are navigating the world or other stories to be told that I can actually resonate with and understand and, learn more about myself through that. So yeah, voguing has also been a very good outlet for me. I've been getting very much into that. And yes, whatever that is for you, and I would say it's going to be the thing that you obsess over. It's going to be the thing that you don't even have to question that you're into. It's just you're going to kind of find it. And then when you find it and you get that rush of energy and joy, dive in. Yeah. I will also say for me, in terms of like seeing yourself like in film, like on screen, I don't think that I've seen myself represented in a way that I feel completely affirmed on film or screen ever. But the closest that I have gotten is the remake of She's Gotta Have It on Netflix with Spike Lee, and DeWanda Wise is the main character who starts out the series in relationships with different men, but throughout the series ends up in a relationship with a woman, and everybody is Black or a person of color. And I was like, they do this? This is a thing? People out in the world live like, okay, yes, this is great. I'm here for it. And I don't know, that was the first time I saw this central, like, melanated woman, like, owning who she was, owning her sexuality, and not apologizing for it set in like a modern day time. And I think in watching that series, it has done wonders for me to just watch something and be like, yes, I have experienced that. I see that. Or like, yes, this makes sense to me in a way that several other things wouldn't. So that's definitely one of mine that I really appreciate. I also like show called Dear White People. It's on Netflix, specifically season 3. Has a very LGBT focused storyline that I don't think they like announced or advertised. They just dropped it one day, and I was like, this is great. Absolutely. And then kind of one of my favorites that I like to round out with is I like to YouTube. I can get lost for hours on YouTube, just going down like the YouTube holes and everything, like looking for stuff. And a couple of my favorites are Terrell Grice, who does the Terrell Show. Listen, magical, truly. Like, focuses on having different creatives, mainly like singers and musicians and composers, like come to the show and just do their thing. And most of them, again, are people of color, and most of them are Black folks. And so I'm just like, Black folks being creative and living authentically, like, it's so refreshing, and so it's like a good rest. Like, whenever I need a moment, to gather myself, like, I will go watch the Terrell Show. Or another one of my favorites is, and let me say this slowly, GOT, G-O-T, damn Zoe. Like, I love Zoe. Love Zoe. Out here living life, and I know you lying.
Listen, we love Zoe because Zoe is just being Zoe. And if people have a problem with that, that's not on them at all. And so I've appreciated that. And then my last one is a podcast that I listened to recently. It's called In Loving Color, and it's specifically, I think, on Spotify, but it talks about being Black, and it talks about being non-binary and LGBT, but it also talks about what that experience is like when you're trying to date.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Child.
We're trying to date in predominantly white places.
Oh. Might need to check that one out myself.
Yeah, listen, I'll send you the link because I sat there and I listened to it. I think I was cooking something. I was like, do y'all know my life? Have I met y'all? Like, what is this? Like, it hit entirely too close to home, but I was thankful for it in a way that, again, I felt affirmed, I felt seen, and it's like, you clearly know exactly what I'm going through because you have also experienced it. So thank you for putting this content out into the world. That's probably one of my favorite podcasts I've listened to ever.
That's awesome. I did not know about that, so I'm going to check it out.
Yes, In Loving Color. It's wonderful. So those are some of the things that I use when I need to find outlets that affirm me and who I am as a person. I think my last point would just be, and this, I will preface this by saying this is something I am working on and at daily because it is not where I want it to be, but it's not where I want it to be, but it's not where it has been, and I'm thankful. And so the last point is you are worthy.
Period.
You just are. And worthiness isn't dependent on, the information that you learn, that the people that you connect with, the things that you achieve. It just is. You just are. And I have really had to literally gather myself and sit with that and think about how I've let my worthiness be described by everything other than me. And I had this realization like last month. And I've really been trying to think about, like, what can I do to remind myself that my worthiness isn't dependent. It just exists. And that's really one of my personal goals right now, to find ways that I can affirm my worthiness myself that isn't dependent on other people. Because while I don't think all of how I viewed my worthiness has been dependent on other people, the small sections that I know have been are pretty, like the small sections that I know have been that way for entirely too long. And again, that doesn't serve me. That doesn't boost my confidence any. And so I'm continually learning, continually working at, what this looks like for me.
Ooh, yeah, that definitely is going to be the hardest one, y'all. That is the hardest one, because it's also, once again, going back to what we said at the very start of this, right? Through all of these different steps, you're constantly battling to exist. You're constantly battling to be yourself, which is why, it's awesome to have, that's why it's so important to find those things that affirm you, right? So you can, in a way, kind of keep pushing forward. But no matter how far in life you get, those messages that you received early on, those lessons that you learned early on about yourself, your worth, how people view you, all of those small, minute things, they still hurt. They still do. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't really necessarily go away. They just kind of hurt less.
Yeah. Facts.
And I don't even know if that it hurts less. It's just you've learned how to more so shield yourself from it. With all of that, you still have to work towards this feeling of being worthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's been helpful for me is, again, pushing away all those things and those layers, and people sometimes too that are intent on not understanding me, that are intent on not only not listening to me, but not hearing, like not comprehending, and silencing those voices and realizing that who I am is not a mistake. What I do and what I will bring to the world is needed. And then it may take a while to figure out how and in what ways, but kind of, you were talking about earlier, like finding things that affirm yourself. Like when you get that energy, you find that thing that you're really into, like go with it, listen to that, trust yourself, because you know where that is.
And like you were saying too, in terms of like kind of pushing away or getting away and surrounding and getting away from people that kind of make you feel negative. I always say put good energy into the people that are putting good energy back into you.
Yes.
So if you should be finding people who aren't, ripping on you for reasons that are just your existence.
Yeah.
If your friend doesn't like the fact that you wear jeans or jeans are shows up in sweatpants to whatever, and that's how you feel comfortable and how you like to move through the world, then maybe you need to find you some different friends that, you can look glam all you want to, and I'm gonna look slack all I want to, no shame, no shade, no shade.
Listen, I'm a friend in jeans, so like I appreciate it because I will show up absolutely in some leggings and some sneakers and call it a day and not be bothered.
I want you to be comfortable,
Yeah.
and I'm going to affirm that for you, right? And you want to find people that are able to do that for you because that is how you start to feel worthy.
Yeah.
Right? If you're constantly surrounded by people telling you that you are not worthy, then of course you're going to believe that.
Yeah.
But you got to find, and I'm not saying go out and find yes people. There's a difference. Yes people are the people that would be like, oh, well, you look fabulous, you look great, and meanwhile you got boogers in your nose, you got spinach in your teeth from the lunch before, and they just like, oh yeah, you always stunning, girl.
No.
Always stunning.
No.
Right? Don't find you those people who are just gonna gas you up just because whatever reason. Find people that actually do care about you and can say, oh girl, you cute. You too cute for this booger in your nose. Let me tell you about it so that you can go fix it, and then you're gonna come back looking great, right? You want people that are going to uplift you.
Yes, the friends that are going to be 100, the friends are going to tell you. Like I think everybody needs to find, whether it be like a group of people, like one person, but you have to have your friends who are gonna gather you in moments where you are not ready to hear it, but you have that authentic relationship with someone where they're just like, listen, this was not it. Like, we love you, we are here for you, but this was not it. And let's talk about how you're gonna do better the next time. Please and thank you. Like, you have to have those friends. That's so important.
Find your people, and they are out there, and sometimes they also are the people that need that, right? So once again, be that role model, be that person that you want to see in the world. Because we need it, y'all. We need it. And there is no one on this earth, I know that's controversial, y'all, there is no one on this earth who is not worthy and who can't become something great. I'm not saying that there aren't people out here who got fed misinformation and grew up in a way that like made them become the person that they are. I'm not saying that, that's not wrong, but I am saying that there is a way for us all to exist on this earth. There is a way for us all to contribute to the greater good of everything. And that starts with, being that person who is able to see that beauty in people and bring it out.
Yes, for sure. And I've had to be, I think I've really focused on like the last couple of years, especially when I see my people, when I see LGBT folks, when I see Black folks, when I see people of color, like I also want, as much as I'm wanting to be affirmed in the spaces that I'm in, I also want to affirm others with those identities to make sure that because maybe no one else sees them in that room, but I do. And I want to make sure they know that.
Yeah, I do that all the time. I think I was going into an apartment building and I saw like a couple of like beautiful, just like Black women. I just was like, excuse me. I just want to let you know that you are a queen and the ground that you walk on turns into gold until your feet move. Like, I just do that because, more than likely you're going to find people that are just going to be flabbergasted and shocked that you took the time to just come up to them and say that small thing. And it can be something as simple as, I just want to let you know that you are stunning and you're beautiful, and that's it. And you walk away. Like, that makes a difference because you are the stranger that like let that person know that they were worthy.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, let me escape here. There are multiple screens. Hold on. Let me stop. Wonderful. Stop sharing. But that is all that I have. Thanks, Saya and Kendra. rocking with me. I appreciate it and having me. This was a blast. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We're gonna hold to see if maybe anyone has any questions.
Okay.
Feel free to leave them in the comments section. Any questions around, anything we talked about today around affirming your existence, and feeling worthy as a person. If you have something that specifically you're struggling with, leave it in the comments section. We'll see it. We'll answer it. But until we have some comments, Krista, I don't know, what is one piece of advice that you wish you could have given your younger self?
Ooh, my younger self was a hot mess, so I'm pretty sure I need
all of this.
But one piece of advice that I could have given my younger self: don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to step into who you know yourself to be, but also don't be afraid to check people when they get it wrong. Because I think a lot of times let people put stuff on me again that I knew wasn't true, and I didn't say anything. I just let it ride, and I was like, you shouldn't have done that. You should have let them know like that wasn't not okay. Because I think most of the time in the situations that I'm thinking about, folks would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, how do I correct? How do I do better for the future? But I just let it ride and I didn't say anything. And so people were out here putting stuff on me that wasn't me, and I just let it happen. And so
let it happen.
Yeah, I just let it happen. So I would say to my younger self, like, don't be afraid to tell people when they're wrong about you. Because again, you know yourself better than anybody.
And especially when we think about adultism, and that's actually a word we haven't used yet, but adultism is kind of, we live in this world that's kind of run by adults.
Yeah.
And so we say that youth in general just don't know what they're talking about, even though they do have some lived experience and can definitely tell you everything about their feelings. And those things are valid, right? But we grow up in this world where we're told, especially if it's an adult, or someone who is older than us, that you don't correct the adult, that's not respectful. And it's almost as if you yourself don't deserve respect and deserve to be treated and talked to in a certain way. It's kind of like, you can talk to me any type of way. And so we grow up in this, and it's kind of, I like the elephant analogy, and how they train elephants, right? You take a baby elephant, you chain it, and it's not strong enough to break the chain. And then when it becomes big enough to break the chain, it doesn't, because it learned growing up that I cannot break this chain, even though now that it can, right? And so it's the same thing with us, right? We grow up with these restrictions, with these rules, with these things that we have to follow, some of them for our safety, some of them are just to fit into society and to keep, like we mentioned earlier, keep the household name or anything like that. Right. But, part of that power is being able to advocate for yourself, stand up for yourself, even if you are just 13, even if you are just 16, right? You still deserve respect. You deserve to feel appreciated. And if you feel safe enough to do so, advocate for yourself. And sometimes you'll be surprised on the responses people have.
For sure. And I think that's honestly one of the things I struggled with most, like as like a kid, as like a young person. I would frequently sit in different situations and see adults be like, this is what we're going to do. And like, you can't say anything about it, and just sit there and be like, like what you're trying to do, like your goal is in direct opposition to what you just said you're going to do, right? As like a child, I'm in trouble for that. Like in trouble, like, well, you're talking back, or you shouldn't speak up. And like, kids should be, seen but not heard. And I'm like, but this doesn't make any sense. Okay.
You could also take my feedback, and the thing could get better.
Wow.
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 That's another secret, y'all. Sometimes adults are completely wrong, but they got to save face.
Listen, it's not worth it. I'm the first, like, my students check me on stuff all the time, and I'm like, did not think of that. Thank you.
And they should be able to, because it's not going to be coming from a place of hate and anything like that. It's like, hey, I'm just noticing that this could be better. Did you know that you could do this? Or, hey, I don't think that's going to get us the result that we want. And, being able to take that and not take it personally. Once again, take that to your therapist, boo.
Nothing to do with me. Got nothing to do with me. think you're muted, perhaps. Oh,
Might have froze. Oh, God. He's gone.
maybe.
Give it 1 second more and see if he comes back again.
Okay. No
I-
worries.
See? There he is.
Oh,
Oh!
oh
We were just talking about how there's been no technical problems this entire time, and we're on the last one, and he keeps disappearing.
no! It happened. It
Can we
happened.
struggle? I don't know what's going on today. Is she plugged in and everything? She said she got 52%. So I don't understand why she acted like this.
It's good. It's good. It's all good.
So Krista, we are getting to the end of everything. I'm not seeing any questions coming into the comment section, but that's cool.
Okay.
I wanted to ask if you had any final thoughts for the people.
Final thoughts.
Anything that maybe you didn't get to touch on, or something that you may have forgotten in the midst of everything?
I would say, that I think it's overly used, but for the purpose of this, I want to highlight the element of truth in it. And it's a phrase specifically that I'm thinking of, and it does get better. And well, again, I do think it is overused. I would say that from my personal experience and just talking with different folks, if you are a young LGBT person, you're like, how do I do this in a world that clearly was not meant for me? It does get better. As Saya said, like, you find your people, you learn how to put together your own worthiness. You listen to yourself, you trust yourself, you connect with others that have shared identities. Those are all helpful things. And when you do have those moments, take those opportunities. It might be completely out of your comfort zone. Take those opportunities, do them, because they're helpful, incredibly helpful.
Thank you so much. Y'all, let me give a shout out to Krista once more, coming at us live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay. And because it's Knoxville, Tennessee, it's 2 hours ahead. So it's really Krista's bedtime, but they took the time out of their night to give it to us. And share some of these nuggets of wisdom, y'all. Take them, savor them. Remember, I would say also, since this is our last stream for Summer Academy, I just want to remind everyone to choose joy when you can. Do you really need to be in the comment section with these people that are not going to hear you?
Nah.
Or do you want to go and watch some kitten videos? Right? You know the news, you know what you need to do, you know the petitions you need to sign, you know the work that needs to be done, and you're going to do that work. And to keep you sustained and alive to continue to do that work, I need you to choose joy when you can. Find the joy in the small moments, find the connections in those small moments, and continue to expand that network of folks that are going to be able to love and support you if you're not getting it right now. And like Krista said, it is an overused phrase, and it can be used very problematically.
Yes.
We're not seeing this in a way to invalidate your experience or invalidate your feelings or to promise you that something magical is going to happen to you in 5 years. Because in 5 years, you still going to have your own strife, your struggles. Life still happens. But as you get more independence, as you find your people, as you are able to become safer to advocate for yourself, you'll find that things are going to start shifting. And as you decide to choose joy more often, things are going to start shifting. And you'll see that as you get older, and you may have some examples of that in your life right now, right? Yeah. So I just wanted to leave y'all with that. Thank you so much, Kendra and Rainfrog Interpreters, for the amazing, consistent ASL interpretation throughout this series. We appreciate you so much. We're so grateful to have you. And it's been an awesome ride to take with you. And with that, y'all, we are going to keep it clean, queer, and under control.